Hey everyone, I'm Brad and this is Watch Rate Heart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list, where I discuss the films I've watched and my feelings about them. And this week, I figured that there would be a Criterion Collection sale coming up in November, so why not review films from the Criterion Collection? And for those who don't know what the Criterion Collection is, it is a boutique label which focuses on contemporary film, classic Hollywood, and world cinema. They often remaster the films in the best quality they can, and they add interesting special features on top, and they also have really good covers on their Blu-rays and 4Ks. If you have a favorite movie that's on them, check them out. You'll love them. I think my favorite one that I've seen is the Mashima, A Life in 4 Chapters one. I thought that was a really interesting one. I've got 4 films from the collection to review, so let's see if these films are worth your money. Let's begin with the Oscar-nominated film, The Battle of Algiers, directed by Gillo Pontecorvo. This has a Letterboxd score of 4.4 out of 5, which makes it number 42 in the top 250 Letterboxd reviews for narrative films. It has a 99% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Foreign Language Film, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Director. Man, if there's anything about this film I have to discuss, it's how superbly directed this film is. Pontecorvo uses a style that seems more documentarian. It's almost dispassionate how they look at everything, but it's also a fascinating look at the battle back and forth between those who are being oppressed and those that are part of the government. Now, I do say dispassionate because it just feels like it's more journalistic in a way. It's just telling you what exactly is going on, but in that way, it does make it much more interesting to watch when it's done at a certain distance while seeing all the events take place. But man, some of the scenes in this film are shot so well. They are powerfully done. I was watching this film baffled as to how he pulled off some of these scenes. Some of the scary scenes in this film are the bombings, and they're shot incredibly well because they actually look like they blew up these places. They probably did in some way, but it also shows the carnage that happens right afterwards. It's actually incredibly well done, and there's some scenes in this film with a lot of extras, a lot of actors who are rioting or protesting, and it looks incredibly well done. It's amazing looking. I also think the music, while sparse in the film, is also great. Of course, it's Ennio Morricone who did this movie. It was funny. I was watching this film, like, in the first few minutes. I'm like, wow, this music is really good. And then I see Ennio Morricone and go, oh, okay. Yes, now it makes sense. Okay. Now, there's not a lot of music in the film. It's actually much more dialogue-driven. But when the music does come up, it is used incredibly effectively. Now, I do like the journalistic take the film is utilizing. But I also have to be honest, a part of me also wished that I had more character time with a couple of these characters. Maybe to attach myself to them and to get a much deeper connection. I think the one guy that I would really like to have seen more of was Ali in the film. This is the guy that you meet at first, you learn is illiterate, but he becomes one of the leaders of the revolutionary group. And I think his character is really interesting. But again, this is more of a journalistic look at what's going on in the Battle of Algiers. So I guess I kind of understand why it didn't attach itself to one character specifically. But overall, the Battle of Algiers is a really good movie. I give it 4 stars out of 5. It is a great movie. I think just in the way that it's directed is incredible. Some of the shots in this movie, some of the action sequences in this movie are incredible to look at. And I do like the distant journalistic take that this film has, even though it sacrifices getting to know some of these characters a little bit better. But overall, 4 stars out of 5 for me for The Battle of Algiers. Alright, and in every episode, I don't only give you my opinion on films, I give you the opinions of people on the Letterboxd community. And let's start with Jerry. Jerry gives it 4.5 stars out of 5. No heart, though, but I won't put it against him. And he says, it's not a matter of good and evil, but simply one of independence or oppression, sovereignty or subjugation, freedom or tyranny. Revolution is the muffled cry of the many, and it may not be heard at first, but it is tireless, dire, and imperative. Nothing blooms where no seed is sown. And I think the first bit of what Jerry said is key when talking about this film. This really isn't a film about good and evil. Both sides do horrific things in this film, but the dispassionate way that the film portrays everything, while showing the chaos that is what's going on, is I think one of the biggest strengths of this film. It makes you decide, okay, were they right to do this? Were they wrong to do this? And it might give some people a very conflicted feeling when watching this film as to who's bad and who's good. To be fair, I think the ones who who are being subjugated are good, but that's just me. It does give you a multifaceted portrayal of what's going on, and that's the thing that makes the film all the better for it. Let's get into the second review. This second review is from Nora. Nora gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Nora says, "Fuck colonialism. Also, Ennio Morricone has never written a flop in his life." I can't say that for certain, but anytime his music is in a film, it's really fucking good. So I have to agree with Nora on that one. This next review is from Jacoby Parrett. Jacoby gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Jacoby says, "Crazy so much this film is referenced. From Jason Bourne to The Clash to Schindler's List. The film could have been made yesterday. Brilliant." Yeah, there are some scenes in this film that really look familiar, but also there are scenes in this film where I was watching and going, how did they pull this off? There's also scenes in this film where I'm going, why hasn't anyone used that shot before? I was really thinking about that throughout the film, but he's right, absolutely. A lot is referenced from this movie alone that I didn't realize until I watched it. And this last review is from Carson Robbs. Carson Robbs gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Carson Robbs says, "How was this movie made? And even more importantly, how was this made 4 years after the war? And most importantly, Ennio Morricone." Yeah, another Ennio Morricone love, and you know what? He kind of deserves it. That's a great question, though. How did this get made, and how did it get made 4 years after all this happened? That is crazy. But honestly, it might have been the best thing to do because the emotions were still raw for the time of all this battling happened. So that's probably a good move on Pontecorvo on that. I know some of you will probably watch this review and going, just 4 stars? Really? And I was debating on 4.5, but I stuck with 4 because as much as I do like the distant portrayal of what's going on in the film, part of me does feel like they should have concentrated on one character just to have a character arc in there. But that's just me. Maybe after a second watch, I'll have a different score. But really, this was a fantastic movie. You should see it if you haven't seen it. And if you're looking to get this on the Criterion Collection through its sale in November, I would say not a bad idea. Next is the film from Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami, and that is Taste of Cherry. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5, which makes it ranked 133 in Letterboxd's top 250 narrative films. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 83% fresh, and it did not win or get nominated for any Oscars, but it did co-win the Palme d'Or that year in 1997. I'm going to be very much against the grain with the rest of the Letterboxd community on this movie. I do think the film is interesting throughout a good portion. I did like how the film was shot, especially how it looks like the characters are not sitting with each other. There was a way that Kiarostami shot this film where he recorded one person doing dialogue and then recorded another person doing dialogue, and they never really were together when they did that. I think Kiarostami was the one doing the dialogue with the actors in each scene. So there's that feeling as well. And I think it kind of reinforces who the character is and maybe what he has done and his flaws and who he is. I thought that was interesting. I think the film is thoughtful about life and death and what the character is going through. I normally like ambiguous film. I like films that make you think, and it hints at certain things and really engages with you to figure out what's going on. I do enjoy films like this. But this is one where the ambiguous ending, I just feel like was a detriment to the film. I think the problem is it's either a little too ambiguous or there really isn't much to sink your teeth into. Because what the film basically is the main character is trying to find somebody to bury him after he commits suicide. You get little hints here and there of what he may have done. Why does he want to commit suicide? The method as to how he is searching for people to do this. What his personality is like. There's hints to that throughout the entire film. But then there's not enough about the character for the ambiguous ending to really hit for me in this. In fact, but I also don't think that if the ending spelled out what happened, I don't think it would have helped either. And seriously, what the hell was the point of the final scene of the film? The final scene basically is Abbas Kiarostami shooting part of the film. When that scene came up, I'm like, are you kidding me? I think what the point of it is what happened doesn't really matter. Don't think too hard about everything. Just try to enjoy life. And I'm like, was that really necessary? Did I need to know that this was actually a film? I didn't need that, no. So I felt like that kind of was unnecessary on that end. I gotta be honest, this film in a way kind of reminded me of The Usual Suspects, and I hate The Usual Suspects, and I hate it because it felt like it wasted my time. I don't think Taste of Cherry wasted my time, but I am kind of struggling whether there is actual depth in this film at all. And when I was going through Letterboxd reviews, I was, of course, stunned by how many people love this film, because I sat at the end of this film going, okay. Like, okay, sure. But what I was really surprised by was looking at critics' reviews and seeing that it's not really universally beloved, and that one of my favorite film critics of all time, which is Roger Ebert, hated this movie. And I kind of see where he's coming from. He says that the film has an emperor has no clothes kind of feel to it. It's pretending to have death, but it does not have any at all. And many people disagree with this. I don't really agree with Ebert on this one, but I kind of see where he's coming from. But I also feel like I probably need to watch this again just to see if maybe I missed something, or that maybe I wasn't in the right mindset to watch this. I'm going to give Taste of Cherry 2.5 out of 5 stars. On the one hand, I'm splitting the baby on this one. I found a good portion of the film interesting. But on the other, I found the ending to be completely unsatisfying in the way that it was made. The final scene itself, I felt, was incredibly unnecessary and kind of annoying, to be absolutely honest. But I usually like Kiarostami's work, but this one, I just wasn't feeling it. But anyway, 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for Taste of Cherry. So I'm going to get to the Letterboxd reviews, and I'm just going to say right off the bat, the vast majority of the reviews of this film are really positive. I'm going to give 2 that are kind of middle road, like where I'm at, and 2 that adore this film. Let's start with Sarah. Sarah gives it 3 stars out of 5, and she says, really wanted to love this, but found it to be too minimal to fully explore and bring depth and emotion to its subject. This I agree with Sarah. I think that there is little bits and pieces to actually sink your teeth into, but it really is not enough. And I do like the minimalism that Kiarostami usually has in his films, but in this movie, I don't think there really is enough for me to actually, and to really dive more into the film and its subjects. Let's go with one who loved the film. This is Matt Hukar. Matt Hukar gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says, Abbas Kiarostami's ability to explore the complex moralities surrounding suicide and in turn life as a whole with such empathy without ever feeling preachy or like a lecture is astonishing. Such simplicity in its approach, yet so poignant and introspective. This is probably my second favorite Kiarostami, even if I have only seen a handful of his movies. I don't know. Like, the final characters seem pretty preachy to me. Then again, the subject of suicide and deciding to end your life is a pretty heavy subject, so I guess if someone were to take it flippantly, it would be a little weird, but I don't know. Like, I guess I kind of see where Matt Hukar is coming from here. I just don't agree. Enjoy the simplicity of Kiarostami's films, but I think this was just a little too simple on that end. This next review is from Logan. Logan gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says, an extraordinarily beautiful piece of cinema, so deep and powerful. Watching this man writhe through the dust-swept vastness of Iran, having deep philosophical conversations with strangers was so moving. Yeah, like I said, there are people who adore this film, and I am just not seeing it, and I'm a little sad that I can't, but I honestly came out of this film going, oh, come on. It's like, really? But, man, people are touched by this film, and I am getting jealous of them every time I look at these reviews. But this last review is from Aurora. Aurora gives it 3.5 out of 5, and this is what Aurora says. The boy who runs, the man who resists, the elder who accepts, fear, resistance, acceptance, death awaits, and so do we. And this is a good point, actually, I think Aurora has, about what this film possibly is about. At least when it comes to the 3 characters that the man comes across. And that is how we deal with death. And yes, a young man usually is afraid of death. Someone who's middle-aged is somebody who understands that death is a possibility, but tries to stop it at any cost. And the elder one is the person who says, hey, it's going to happen soon to me. If so, you have no control over it, so maybe there is a power in having control over death itself. That is all true when it comes to this film. But as I'm reading Aurora's stuff here, I don't think the film really dives into that subject all that well. Again, for other people, they do, and for that I'm infinitely jealous. But yeah, I gotta say, This is one of these films that I was really looking forward to watching because I watched Close Up and Certified Copy, and I loved Certified Copy. I thought that was a great movie. Close Up was a bit of a head scratcher for me, but I did very much enjoy it. To me, it just felt like there was not enough there to really sink into the themes of the film, which to others definitely disagree, and I can understand that. I just felt like the film was empty in a way that I was very surprised by. But again, I think I will definitely watch this film another time, and maybe I will get something else out of it once I do.
I am not an animal! I am a human being!
Next is one of David Lynch's most celebrated films, The Elephant Man, starring Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5, which makes it number 173 in the top 250 Letterboxd narrative films. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 91% fresh. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actor for John Hurt, Best Director for David Lynch, and Best Adapted Screenplay. There is a lot about The Elephant Man that I really like. The juxtaposition of the harsh black and white with a heartfelt story, I think, is superbly well done. There's a lot in this film that feels like dark, dingy, and dirty, but there's this really sweet story of hope that you would think would clash with the harsh visuals of the film, but they actually better enhance what has happened and what was going on with John Merrick throughout the entire film. Speaking of John Merrick, John Hurt gives a fantastic performance as the main character. I mean, he is in a lot of makeup, but physically he does an outstanding job playing this character, and just by using his eyes and his voice portrays a character that is very sensitive and fragile, but also very resilient, and I actually really enjoyed his performance. Speaking of the way John Hurt looked in the film, I think the makeup design is also really well done in this film. Like everything from the body to the face. It's interesting because when I looked at photos of this, I definitely looked at it and was like, oh yeah, that's a David Lynch film because he looks grotesque. But the way that they make John Merrick look in the film at first is shocking, but then it's instantly humanizing, not just by John Hurt's performance, but by what the makeup artist actually did to create Merrick. I think it was superbly well done. I also think the use of sound and music in the film is highly effective. You don't hear a lot of music in the film. What you do hear is a lot of industrial sounds, pipes clinking and stuff like that. And it's done first pretty subtly, but then as the film goes into some of the more darker elements, those sounds seem to pop up. And it also helps enhance the character of John Merrick as well. But I think the best thing about this film is the theme. And I think the theme of the film is, who is crueler in this film? The person that was keeping Merrick captive and exploiting him, or the doctor who was trying to help him and bring him into society, but therefore being exploited in a completely different way? I would think the doctor is less cruel, but even Anthony Hopkins' character in the film also says that he might be doing the exact same thing that the other person was doing to John, but in a much different way. And even though the film pointed that out, I don't think it needed to be pointed out, but I don't think it was bad that it did point it out. It was just a very effective theme that was done throughout the film, but where even though John Merrick was being treated more like a person, he was actually being treated more like a freak show in some ways as well. And I think the film was really effective in showing that. Man, I gotta tell you, another David Lynch film that is an absolute masterpiece. I watched The Straight Story last year and was pleasantly surprised by not only how heartfelt and emotional the film was, but also how great it was in filmmaking wise. But of course, it's a David Lynch film, so I guess I shouldn't have expected less. I'm giving The Elephant Man 4.5 out of 5 stars. An amazing movie. I was so sad at the end. I actually teared up a little bit. I was really emotional. John Hurt gives a great performance, as does Anthony Hopkins, and honestly, there's a lot of good supporting performances as well in this film. But I think the theme of the film of who is crueler to John as the film goes on, I think is probably one of the best things about this film. And it really has you question, how we can be more accepting of people. But even though how we try to be accepting of somebody who has the problems that John has, we end up being crueler by accident. And I think the film just shows that just in a great way. Once again, 4.5 out of 5 stars for The Elephant Man. Definitely check this out. I don't see it streaming anywhere. I own a copy of it. So I think if you're going to be checking out the 50% off sale for the Criterion Collection, get this movie. You should definitely get this movie. Alright, let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. And let me tell you, a lot of glowing reviews. This one's from Stephen Clark. Stephen just gives it a heart, and he says, "What can you say about one of the greatest films ever made? This is a humanistic masterpiece. One of those films that captures the beauty, pain, joy, devastation, triumph, and agony of the human experience. David Lynch, rest his soul, created something here that will live forever. John Hurt's delicate, empathetic, gentle, and dignified performance of John Merrick is just utterly perfect, and I agree with that. John Hurt's performance is so good, not only just the way that he portrays it, but physically as well. One of the easiest characters to feel sympathy for in all of cinematic history. One of its most important characters, I might also add. Anthony Hopkins is a light in this film, and it still holds up as one of his finest works. Lynch captures the horrors of our world and its most hidden beauties. Timeless art lives forever. I think Steven likes this movie. What do you think, guys? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that he is saying that I absolutely agree with. It's just interesting with a director like Lynch and what he is most well known for, which are these disturbing, esoteric horror films. That he made 2 films, like in The Straight Story and in this film, The Elephant Man, that are profoundly moving in a way that I would have never expected of him. Let's get to the next review. This one is from Asiano. Asiano gives it 4.5 stars out of 5. And Asiano says, "It is fascinating how skillfully multi-threaded the movie is." Yes, absolutely. While most of the attention is obviously drawn to the very matter of tolerance and fear of things we are not used to, David Lynch explores this topic right down to its core, disassembling it into separate aspects. There was a much longer review from Asiano about this film that I had to cut out. I would highly recommend reading that. Even though the film is a lot about the drama, what Merrick goes through, there is a lot of threads and a lot of themes that the film is diving into, and I think it does a masterful job of doing that. So this last review is from Boxer Santaros, and he doesn't give it a rating, but I will say that I don't think he's a fan of this film, and I'm not pointing him out just to be like, look at this guy. I just want to read it, and I want to give you my thoughts on what he says on this. Boxer Santaros says, "Looks great, sounds great, great performances, all wrapped tightly around nothing. It's enough to actually make for a sweet and pleasant experience while sitting through it. But the second I think back on it and try and probe a little deeper, I just want to vomit. Toxic, sanctimonious, liberal dreck. Look, he's perfectly capable of meekly brown-nosing high society. He really is deserving of dignity and respect. This is theoretically a better movie than Dune, sure, but I think I'd rather just be watching Dune all the same. I'll take the painful, stupid, abrasive, flailing, nonsensical failure any day of the week over the polished prestige bait covering up such a casually vile outlook. Dune is Lynch's failed post-punk experiment, but this is his Marvel movie." Okay, so obviously I disagree with Boxer on this. I think this film is a profoundly moving and brilliant film. That said, I kind of understand where Boxer is coming from here. If you look at the film in a certain light, it kind of makes it look like that Merrick is only accepting because high society is accepting of him, and that the lower society never accepts him because of the way he looks. Thus, high society is a much better barometer of character and of being acceptance than anything else. I think that's kind of what Boxer is saying here in this. And I don't think that's what the film is saying, but I think, honestly, the film is showing that no matter what Merrick does, he'll never be fully accepted unless he is part of a show. And that is probably what makes this film so sad for me, is that he is a perfectly pleasant, intelligent, and beautiful human being. And no matter what he does, he's a sideshow. He is something to be gawked at. He is something to be propped up in a certain way. And I think as beautiful as the film is thematically, it's also why it's a very tragic film. Because even though he is treated with respect by, I would say, a handful of people, you could also debate that he was not being respected at all by the Doctor. It's a tough film to sit through at times and think about. And yeah, I can understand why a Boxer can look at this and go, I hate this film because of this. And that's perfectly understandable. I don't agree, but I definitely see where he's coming from here. And I think it's interesting to point out a different perspective of a film that maybe someone had a very visceral reaction to it. And I hope I get a comment from Boxer Santaros as well on this, because I would really love to hear what his thoughts are on what I said, and maybe if he wants to expand on what he feels about The Elephant Man. Boxer, I hope to hear from you soon. But anyway, I love The Elephant Man. I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's a profoundly moving movie, but also, like mentioned in the other reviews, it's also a multi-threaded film. It's also something that deals with a lot of themes in a lot of different ways, and it invites different types of reactions, as Boxer has noticed as well. I think it's, again, one of David Lynch's masterpieces, and I just think, maybe for the exception of Dune, which I have not seen, I'm kind of curious about seeing myself. I think it's kind of hard to imagine a David Lynch film that isn't a masterpiece at this point.
Listen, I can't make you a great dancer. I don't even know if I can make you a good dancer. But if you keep trying and don't quit, I know I can make you a better dancer.
Finally, we have a film by Bob Fosse, and that is All That Jazz, starring Roy Scheider. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5, which makes it 111 out of the top 250 narrative films on Letterboxd. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 88% fresh. It was nominated for 9 Oscars. It won 4, including for art direction, score, costume design, and film editing. The film is a sometimes funny but very energetic look at show business. I definitely like the first act of the film, where it concentrates on the creative process of Roy Scheider's character, who's named Joe Gideon, who is really just a stand-in for Bob Fosse in this film. And Scheider is great as the main character. He's charismatic, he's funny, he just inhabits everything in this character incredibly well. You believe every single bit of this character through Scheider. He just does a fantastic job as the Bob Fosse stand-in. There's a lot of great song and dance numbers, which is something I really would expect coming from Bob Fosse. In the first half, a lot of it is done in a studio. It doesn't have that razzmatazz, as I guess you would call it. There were definitely very good song and dance numbers. The ones that really are bombastic are in the second half. But the one problem I had, and it is a big problem in this film for me, is that the second half goes on for far too long. Like, way too long. I'm not going to spoil what happens in the second half, but basically this film goes into a part where Gideon's character starts to think back at what he has been doing and maybe has some sort of regret. I would say not really, but he does cycle through what he was doing in his past. And that stuff's fine. But then the film also kind of goes back and forth between the business side of what's going on with Gideon and the play that he is doing. And that goes on for a little too long. I think that was a little unnecessary. Those parts are to show exactly how cutthroat the business of entertainment is, which the film showed in the first half well enough. So I didn't really think that was all that necessary. But the final 15 minutes of this film is this long, protracted scene with a lot of song and dance numbers. And they look really good. But again, they go on for far too long. The film is very indulgent about Joe Gideon's indulgences, which I guess is kind of the point of the film. But even then, sometimes the best thing to do is the less is more adage, which I felt the film did in the beginning, but it kind of hammers home even further in the second half. And I just felt like it was too much. But again, I think people will look at that criticism and go, well, that was kind of the point of the film, which, okay, I kind of get, which is why I don't hate the film. I actually quite like the film, which is why I'm giving All That Jazz 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's an enjoyable film. I like the song and dance numbers. Scheider is great in this film. I really enjoyed his performance. And honestly, it is a very entertaining film. I just think it drags itself out way too long in the second half. I honestly think the first 2 acts should have been about the creation and getting it running, and then the third act was the thing that I will not spoil, go into that part in the third act, probably truncated a lot more. But anyway, it is a very good film. I definitely enjoyed it, but I guess not as much as other people did. So 3.5 stars out of 5 for me for All That Jazz. And let's get into the final Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Nicholas Jovanov. Nicholas gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says simply, breathtaking. And yes, there are some definitely visually appealing, very breathtaking sequences in this film, especially in the last 15 minutes. I have to admit, as much as I felt that was drawn out, it looked really good. Let's get into the second review, which is from Darren R. Darren R. also gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Darren says, if you're going to make a mordant autobiopic of your overstressed life as a genius, choreographer, and director, why not go all out and make it an avant-garde song and dance picture with nightmarish elements to really depict your physical and mental breakdown? The editing, songs, costumes, it's all so gritty as if Fosse is late 70s NYC, waking up late in the morning after an all-night binge. Scheider portrays the manic desperation with both passion and wariness. The frenetic energy just cooks until it boils over in the final act. Best musical ever? See, I see Darren's point in this. I think the point of it was to be overindulgent, to basically personify what the character is. But even so, I did feel like it was like a little too much for me, but he definitely enjoyed it. And I have to agree with a lot of the things that Darren is saying. The editing is great, the songs are great, the costumes are really good. The grittiness, I don't know about that, but it definitely is a very good movie, and I understand why people love it very much. Let's get into the third review. This one is from 1 Minute Reviews. 1 Minute Reviews gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and they say, needed a chirpy musical to lift my spirits. Definitely didn't get that in this subversive gem. Yeah, this ain't a happy musical. Absolutely not. Well, in parts, I guess, but, well, no, not really. And the final review is from Jeffrey Fink. Jeffrey Fink gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, impressive, but a little too self-important. And that's the point I want to get across here. It is a very impressive film, just like Jeffrey Fink said. But maybe not self-important. Well, yeah, it is a little self-important, but definitely too self-indulgent. It just felt like there were scenes in this film that were very unnecessary. But again, I think people will look at that and go, well, that's just the point of the film. But on the one hand, I do get it. But on the other hand, it does become a little bit too much as the film draws to its close. But again, I do enjoy all that jazz. Do I love it as much as other people do? No, not really. But it's definitely a quality film that if you haven't given a shot, I think you should definitely check out. And that is it for this episode of Watch, Rate, Heart. Before I go, I want to know, what are you getting in the next Criterion Collection sale on Barnes & Noble? I'm very sure it's in November. Honestly, what I'm trying to think about getting is the Adventures of Antoine Doinel box set. I think it just re-released on Blu-ray and 4K recently. I really want that box set. Ever since I watched The 400 Blows, I wanted to watch all the sequels. And when I get the box set, I will definitely get to it. Maybe I'll even do a video on that if I get the chance. If I don't end up getting that, I think the thing that I would like is actually the World of Wong Kar-wai box set, but I've heard there's some mastering problems with that box set, so I am still debating whether I want to get that or not. If you like any of the reviewers I have highlighted in this episode, you could check out the video description for a link to their Letterboxd profile, and be sure to give them a follow and let them know that Brad from Watch, Rate, Heart sent you. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at Watch, Rate, Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch, Rate, Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and love movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.